Well, I think first of all, you did reach some pretty critical levels in actually gold, silver, and platinum, and they failed, which is not a total surprise. Right now, they're in pretty nasty downtrends, and we could see some lower action ahead. Before we resume another rally. But one of the big drops in gold and silver, especially, is the reappointment of Chair Powell. The interest rate policy is going to change here, which will have a direct effect on precious metals, because if they're going to continue with this cheap or free money or quantitative easing without raising interest rates, then gold and silver will be strong. But when they're going to have to start raising to combat the inflation, unless they decide to do what really is right later. 100%. They would be much better for gold, but they'd be horrible for the world economy. They'd be horrible for the United States, and they would turn the United States into a socialist country or a communist country and be under the rule of somebody like China. Because when you give everything away, we have systematically given control back to China, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. We are no longer the world power we were because we have no control. Nobody listens to what we say, so our big stick does no longer carry. Once you give up the control of the number one key commodity on the globe, besides food, which is oil, okay, you are looking for a lot of trouble, and that is why we're seeing so many dramatic price rises in the price of gas and the price of oil. But for gold and silver, sure, Lael Brainerd as the Fed chair, which is who the progressive wanted, gold might go to 2,500 right away, because again, their agenda is to continue to give stimulus. And I believe, in my opinion, the whole situation that we're watching here was designed to get universal basic income. And that's why they never did anything else. And that's the problem, because you cannot have that. Only two groups of the population like that, and that is the very rich that will no longer be affected, will have no competition, and the very poor will get something for nothing. Oh, I think that the progressives took a good kick in the teeth when Powell was reappointed. That it's going to really change their entire agenda, and not to mention, it's a year away, but the next election, the country is on very much unrest here, and there is a lot of problems and issues here. But one thing you cannot do, you cannot affect people's money and what they pay. And, even though they report these inflation numbers, which are total garbage, but it's 6.4%. But of course, they exclude the two biggest expenses that every American family has, or every family in the world has, which is fuel and energy and food. So if you take that out, if you put that in the equation, you got inflation at about 15 to 20%. And wage growth is at about 4.5%. Not a very good mix, considering you're working in a negative factor. Well, I think he's going to try to do things to settle down much of the anger that's in the country, which I don't think he'll be able to do. I think look, here's the bottom line. Historically, the House changes very dramatically during a midterm election. In this one, especially because of what's going on. So I think what they're trying to do now, they're trying to do some damage control to not have these elections swing dramatically back. Where, this is a very serious matter, because they're trying to erase the history. And we all know what happens when you forget what happens in history. You are doomed to repeat it. And that is exactly where we're headed, because they're making things up that don't exist. This will depend on the Federal Reserve. Okay, this will depend on interest rates. And they're going to have to slow inflation by raising rates or going back to fracking and shale producing. Okay. And I don't think they're going to go back to the fracking and shale so fast. So there's going to have to be rates are going to have to be hiked automatically. And the banks themselves are signaling much higher interest rates, because if you've watched the banks trade the last few days, since this has happened, they have already rallied fairly dramatically from the sell-offs they had, because of course their profits will go up with higher interest rates. But I think that's what's going to happen. And I think we're in a real danger of stagflation, which will take us back to the Jimmy Carter era. And I don't know that we're going to get to 10 or 15 or 18% interest rates, but we are accustomed to less than 1. And if you go up to 6, suddenly the housing market starts to suffer, because you can't sell home housing anymore, because we're a by the month society. Higher rates will hurt. And of course, it will hurt the government, which is another problem, because it's $75 billion a month. Every quarter point hike is the debt service that they have to pay when interest rates go down, because people can afford the monthly payment. So they make the upgrade to a more expensive home. Well, now the price of homes are going to drop because the interest rates are going to make the payments automatically higher. It's a vicious circle. So what you're really seeing here is that the lousy monetary supply that we have practiced for the last 20 years or 30 years, going back to Greenspan, actually it's 41 years, but for the last 41 years is to, pump into the money supply and artificially inflate assets that are not worth what they're being priced at. But because of the cost of money, people buy them. And that's why you had such a hot housing market. I get 5 emails a day from different places that, refinance, take the money out, spend it. And that's going to change because it's going to change the value of the house, and in certain parts of the country, like where I live in Illinois right now, I can't even sell my house. Nobody wants to buy it. And I'm already taking about a $300,000 haircut from a house I bought at the bottom in 2009. But nobody wants to live in Illinois. So there are some sectors that are still very hot, like my home in Vegas. On the other hand, it's up 50% in 2 years. So that's again, there's a whole bunch of things that we don't get privy to reports. And of course, government reports are worthless anyways because they're always adjusted later.
All right. We've talked about the bad and the ugly. Let's talk about the good. What good news do we have? What direction is the country taking that maybe would put a smile on Todd Bubba Horwitz's face? I
got to be honest with you. Right now, there is nothing that is making me smile because between higher taxes that they're going to try to, the thought of it was 400,000 above. That's a bunch of crock. I mean, everybody's going to be paying high taxes for those who pay taxes. So I think that we will come out of it. Look, America is strong. We've gone through tough times before, but there's nothing really to grab onto as long as the progressives have an agenda. They get nothing done in government anyways. The only thing they've gotten done in the last 5 years is to take a raise during COVID when nobody else was working. Okay. So I don't see them doing anything. I think the government is breaking down. I think the process is breaking down. And there's not a lot to get excited about with, that I can look to the future and say, this is going to be great. Now, talk to me, after the next elections. And if we can at least, I don't have a political party affiliation myself, but I hate when either party has all 3 houses. And I think we need that to split. And then I'll have some more excitement. But right now, it's going to be a long year waiting for this next election, I think.
Well, the economy overall is not normalizing. Is it not moving in a direction?
No, the economy's in horrible shape.
Really?
Look, you can't get people to work. You go to a drive-through, you can't go inside because they got no help. Okay, they're closing restaurants because they can't get help. People don't want to work. There's 11 million open jobs and 9 million people unemployed. But they don't want to work because they get this stimulus money. The stimulus money is the worst ever that you could ever ask for because the only people who pay for the stimulus are the middle class. So we get taxed higher just to pay these people to stay home and do nothing. And I'm tired of watching people sit on their ass and eat bonbons watching TV while I'm working. I don't like that. That is not what I had in mind when I went to work back 50 years ago. And for example, Domino's Pizza has a machine now that they can have one employee in the store now. They have one machine that not only makes the pizza, boxes it, and has it ready to go. And someday you might see a whole store it'll be like a vending machine. You order your pizza and it'll make it for you and it'll pop it right out of a slot.
Okay. Maybe that's something to look forward to. Who knows? We're living in Back to the Future days. All right, let's close it back on gold and silver. Let's factor all this in. So you're bearish overall on the economic and socio-political landscape. I'm guessing you're bearish on the dollar as well. Inflation's a problem for you. How do you feel about gold and silver now? I think
the dollar is going to rally, just so you understand. The dollar is still the reserve currency of the world. Okay. And as long as it remains the reserve currency, when there are fears out there, people talk about the VIX index, for example. They talk about gold and silver, when things go bad. Money runs to the treasury bonds and to the U.S. dollar because those are still considered the safest places to put money in times of turmoil. Now, as far as gold and silver, look, I think for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I have no idea. We're in a downtrend. But I think it's a great opportunity for those who invest in precious metals to be buying physical metals. I'm not a big fan of trying to accumulate paper gold or paper silver. I think that's a mistake. I think you have to take money that you can afford. I think you have to take money and you can start buying and nibbling and starting to store precious metals, because they will have a much greater value at some point down the road. And I'm very bullish over history, but I'm just not bullish right now. But I'm still a buyer of physical metals, and I am never selling my physical metals.